you're going to come into abduction. So across the body, abduction and flexion. You can squeeze out as much flexion as you can, trying not to rotate through the torso. And as you move up and overhead, we're going to go into overhead flexion. Shoulder CARs are a great way to start bringing awareness to the joint tissue of the shoulder. You start out by having the arm in external rotation, standing up nice and tall. You're going to come into abduction. So across the body, abduction and flexion. You can squeeze out as much flexion as you can, trying not to rotate through the torso. And as you move up and overhead, we're going to go into overhead flexion. So now we're in overhead flexion. Our bicep is right next to our ear. We're going to imagine there's a big X on our bicep. We're going to take that X and move it away from our ear as we move into internal rotation. Careful not to hike up towards the ear here. We're moving into internal rotation. We're trying to be very isolated about how this joint moves. And then we're going to move into extension as we're moving into internal rotation here. So now we're in extension. Our back of our palm comes next to the back of our pants. We're going to extend back into as much extension as we can find, and then we're going to externally rotate. So we've externally rotated. We're going to start bringing the arm up and over into flexion again. Once we reach flexion, we're going to take our arm, we're going to begin to externally rotate into abduction as well as we come across the body and bring the arm back to where we started. Now, doing shoulder CARs, as I said, is a great way to not only start moving the bone around all the available space that you have in your joint, but it's a great way to bring awareness to the tissue, awareness to your nervous system, and to help give you kind of a benchmark for where your shoulder is at any given point in time. Now, one of the things that I think I get a question about oftentimes is, well, how do I load my CARs? I've got a couple of ways that I like loading the CARs. Before I start to add external loads to the CAR, I might want to start by driving a little bit more internal force or internal drive. So sometimes I might have a person grab a ball, a little bit of weight to it. I want them to hug that to their chest, and then I'll have them squeeze it. I want them to squeeze it as hard as they possibly can. I want them to drive neural drive, so I want them to emphasize as much effort and energy as they can into creating more tension. And that's going to increase internal drive, internal force, internal neural drive. Okay, so we're not adding any external load at that point. Another way that we can start to add a little bit of internal drive is just by holding on to something. And that's a great way to start adding internal drive too, because then you can hug against the object and hold on nice and tight. What this also provides when you hold on to something stiff, like a rack, is an external block. So now the external block provides a different type of emphasis and input, because now you're taking your body up against something that's immovable. So now you have the ability to understand, am I rotating away from this post? Am I peeling away from it as I start to go into internal rotation? So now you can start to emphasize something a little bit different, and it just provides a different input, because now I can hold my abdomen and my midsection against the block, against the post, and I can move through that motion, and I might have limited range that I had before. Another thing that I can do is I can completely take my body and place it against the wall and take myself into thoracic extension or thoracic rotation. So now I'm in thoracic rotation. My spine cannot move anywhere except this direction. Okay, so now I'm running through, I lose some of my abduction, but now as I move through this portion here, I no longer have the ability to rotate through my thoracic spine in order to try and get more rotation, internal rotation of the shoulder and more extension of the shoulder. So I'm limiting the ability for this bone to be integrated into movement of the rest of my body. That doesn't mean you shouldn't integrate. What it means is we're just giving you an opportunity, or placing your tissues in a variety of different circumstances that challenge the tissues differently, challenge your nervous system differently. Those are just a few ways in which you can start to change the way in which your CARs have provided some form of internal drive and then a little bit of blocking in order to increase that internal drive. You can check out the full video, which goes into more depth with external load on my Substack.